Welcome back. In this video, I want to show you buttons, and while doing so, also how toasts work. You might wonder, what the heck is a toast? Well, it's not the juicy thing that you put your jam on or whatever you prefer. It is actually just a little pop-up in your application. And if you are an Android user, you have seen toasts a lot before. So let's quickly create a button. So here, a button inside of our row. So actually we don't need to have these additional columns. So I'm just going to create a button, which is also a composable, right? Let me just add that like so. And you see the only thing that a button needs to implement is the onClick. And then obviously we can also say what should be inside of the button. So for example, I can have a text inside, which then will display what the button will have as a text content, so to speak. So let's call this one my button for now. And then we should see that it says my button here. So there we are. Our user interface is updated. Now it says my button. And we could also say click me. All right, click me. Just force people to click on it. And then after a few seconds, it should also update here. Okay, so how can we actually do anything when we click on a button? Because currently nothing happens. It just doesn't do anything because the onClick method is not doing anything. It just says to do. All right. So let's see our button. Let's click on the button. You see it animates. That's the default behavior of the button. You maybe not see it because it's quite small, but yeah, it does animate. But now, how can I actually display something or do something interactive? And what we're going to do in this example is going to be very simple. We're just going to display a toast. Now, in order to display a toast, we need the context of where the toast should be displayed. Now, what is the context? Well, the context is basically just in which area of the application so should something happen. And I say it should be used within a composable function. So the context should be inside of the local context of my current composable, which is our unit converter. So I'm going to say, I'm going to create a context, which will be local context dot current. So there is this thing called local context, and if you want to use it, you can see it's redly underlined, or it's a red color, but there is this import that we can do. We can import this property called local context. So once we do that, suddenly the text gets purple. And what happens as well, we have now imported this thing here at the top. Android X Compose UI Platform Local Context. So this now gives us the local context that we're going to need whenever we want to use a toast. So in order to write a toast, we can use this toast class. There's this class called toast, which is inside of Android widget, which we already have imported here at the top. So here under Android widget toast, where it will be automatically imported for us. So then we can call this method called make text, where we need to pass some details in. So the text, the duration, and the context at first. So let's pass the context that we just created earlier. Then we need to pass the text that we want to display. So thanks for clicking is what I'm gonna say. And then, and let me put that into a separate line so it's a little more readable. Thanks for clicking. And then I need to add an integer which says how long the toast should be displayed. And there are two default values here. Okay, toast dot length long and length short. Let's just use length long, which will display the little toast for quite some time. Let me actually put that into a separate line also, so it's a little more visible for you inside of all of this, what's going on. Now we have created this toast, but we're never actually running it. So in order to show it, in order to display it, we need to do dot show, okay, inside of our code all here. So it's just after this toast length long, closing bracket. So there's a lot of code going on here. What is happening? Well, we have this button that we created earlier. We gave this button a text, which is inside of this curly bracket here. So it's really separated. Now we pass some details to our button. So the parameters. One of the parameters is the onClick event. So this onClick event needs actually to execute something. You can see that here. All right, it's going to execute whatever is in those brackets. Now we need to add curly brackets for that, which we had by default. Now inside of those curly brackets, we can implement our code that should be executed the moment somebody clicks on the button and the onClick event is triggered. Now what I'm doing is I'm using a toast in order to show some text on the screen, and in order to use this function called, or this method called make text, I need to pass the context, I need to pass the text, as well as the duration that it should be displayed. So this will make the toast, but then in order to show the toast, I also need to call the function show on top of it, or the method show on top of that. So now let's run this. And by the way, in order to get the context, we created it up here. Now let's run this real quick and see how this is gonna look like on our screen. So let me click, and you see thanks for clicking pops up here at the bottom. So once again, thanks for clicking. So that at the bottom here is called a toast. All right, now you know what a toast is. And now you've seen how to use toast, and you've seen how to use interactive features of a button. Now in the next video, we're going to use the button in a different approach. We're going to use the button as a drop-down menu, so to speak. So see you there.